Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first series in our Candidate Academy on building your brand. We're going to spend the next little bit of time with you in this recording talking about what that means to us on the TPE Candidate Subcommittee. So before we get started, let's tell you a little bit about who we are. So you can see our faces on our videos here. And if you want to know more information, just scan this QR code that tells you all about us and all the other wonderful TPE planning committee members. So who's talking to you? Well, my name is Steph Olson, she, her, hers. I am at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I work in career services as the career services coordinator, specifically in their School of Pharmacy. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie to introduce herself.
Hi all, my name is Julie Batt, she, her, hers pronouns. I am at Winthrop University getting my second master's. I'm an alum and decided to go back and take some business classes. I have worked within residence life throughout my entire career. Right now I'm taking a break, working on finding how I can better get that business skill to move up. And that's kind of where I am right now.
Nice, thanks, Julie. And I am Andre Jordan Jr. I use he, him, his pronouns, currently serving as the Assistant Director in the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And I'm happy to be here today.
So here's our presentation overview, right? These are the things you want to highlight within your job search. So identifying the why. Why do you want to be here? What influences you? Identify where you are in your career journey. What are you looking for? And finally, creating a personal statement summary. This can be what you present at the beginning of a resume or your elevator pitch.
All right, so when we think about the things that you should be thinking about when wanting to identify your why, some of the things that we thought were important to highlight were assessing your values, considering your goals, thinking through where you find motivation, and really gathering your thoughts around, is this something that I need to have to be successful in my next role, or is it something that would be nice to have? So in thinking of your values, right, those are things that are kind of intrinsically set within you, the things that come from your upbringing, your own moral or ethical code, things that you find to be important. Those don't go away when you enter the workspace. And it's important when you're looking into new roles to think through, how does this job, this opportunity, this university align with what's important to me or not? Um, what are the things that are important to you to think through when making that next choice in that decision? Um, the next thing is considering your short and long-term goals. In the short term, what am I looking to accomplish, right? Do I have a set of skills that I want to gain? Do I have a set of experiences that I want to get on my resume? Are there things that I want that are going to help build and edify myself, my skills, my resume to prepare me for whatever I'm thinking about in the long term, which is another thing important to think about. What are the things that I hope to say that I've done, that I've been through, that I've accomplished at the end of my career? Think beyond titles is important, right? A lot of people get hung up on, like, I want to be a dean, I want to be a VP, which is really important to think through. But it's equally important to say, maybe if I don't even have the titles that I maybe wanted when I was in graduate school, what are the things that I hope to contribute to the larger field is really important to think about. Where do you find motivation? Transparently, higher ed is going through a lot of transitions right now. And it's really important to think very specifically around, what are the things that make me excited and motivated to do this work. It can sometimes be very challenging and very tumultuous terrain that you're navigating in this field. And we want to make sure that you understand what it is that keeps you going, what it is that gets you out of bed in the morning. And then when you're job searching, right, it's always good to have a list of non-negotiables, right? Things that you must have in that area, at that institution, in that role, to be successful. And then it's also important to think through things that are nice to have. This will come in handy when you're going through negotiations, when you're going to decide between multiple job offers. It's really important to know what are my non-negotiables versus what are the things that, I would love to have, but I can do without.
So I think it'd be kind of nice for our listeners to hear if we share some of our own things in this area. I'm happy to start. I think as I listen to this, I'll share my motivation for working in higher education. I've worked in higher education in a variety of roles in student affairs for over 10 years, and sometimes I'm surprised that it's been that long, or it feels like it's been just a short time. But really, in career services, one of the pieces that gives me a lot of motivation is this idea of making an impact on the workforce. So, yes, of course, I really enjoy working with students, but there's a bigger picture to that. And we often talk about when we're in higher ed, students are definitely a big focus, but there is some broadness behind students. Like, what's the bigger impact besides just working with students? There's a lot more individuals we work in, and for me, in career services, it's seeing this synthesization of students getting through their journey, getting jobs, but then also hearing from employers, seeing what's going on in the workforce, and trying to help students understand that, but also trying to help the workforce understand what's going on in the student journey, what's trickling up to help them be supportive of future employees. So that is one of my pieces of my why. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, so I can share my why is much less, I guess, political or educated. I was looking for a bathroom at my freshman orientation. I have a disability, and I found two entry-level professionals and ended up joining Hall Council, becoming RSA president. And then kind of I went to summer camp growing up, always knew I wanted to provide that home away from home. I always had a lot of different social factors that kind of made home a place that I needed to leave, right? And so I wanted to create that home environment for others, right? And that has kind of been my why and what I've created throughout my career.
And you both did great jobs, I think, talking around your why. I think I share a lot of your sentiments, Julie, with like how I kind of got introduced into this as a career field because I used to want to be an attorney. And Steph with like kind of your motivations of, wanting to help students and be that change factor. I think what I think about a lot is the values piece, and really thinking through like it's really important to me that I consider a lot of certain things when I am job searching, specifically when I think about the location, right? Being a person of color, there are certain things I have to take into account when picking an area to live in, right? Is there going to be a place for me to get my hair, like my locks retwisted? Are there going to be places where I can find community? I can find that the things that make me feel comfortable and at home. And I've accepted roles where I went for the institution title or I went for the job title, and I didn't really think through what's life going to be like after 5 o'clock. And so now that I've gone through some things that weren't the ideal situation, that's something I think about a lot is like, where do my values align with not just the job, but the life that I'm going to live outside of the job? So I think that's really important for candidates to consider. Just think through, what type of environment, what type of world will I be navigating in this role? So I just wanted to add that on. So the next thing we thought was really important is that you think through where you feel that you are in your career, right? This is not obviously a prescriptive list. People kind of ebb and flow in and out of these different levels a lot, but we thought it would be important to just kind of start highlighting some of the different options of where you could be in your career. So the first level we wanted to highlight was the paraprofessional or graduate level. These will be like your RA positions, your student tour guide positions, your graduate assistantships. Those types of things are giving you outstanding skills that I didn't really know the value of until I was out of them. But they are really preparing you and serving as that foundational, supportive place where you really get to figure out what is it about this field, that I enjoy? What are things that I don't enjoy? You get a little bit more like flexibility to learn, make mistakes, grow, that type of thing. Entry level is typically that role that you get when you first leave out of graduate school or those first few where you're like getting your foot in the door, really building that network, really building those skills before you're ready to start taking on more responsibility and things of that nature. We'd say mid-level requires some level of experience or expertise, right? You're probably supervising some entry-level folks. You're probably maybe overseeing a little bit more, have control over a little bit more of an organization than um, you typically would at the entry level. And so you're really starting to move up the ranks, but you're not quite at that director level yet, which is like oftentimes your directors, your deans, your people that have this high oversight of the larger division of student affairs or the larger operation of the university. These are the folks that are often at the big serious like decision making tables, and they're having those kind of high level conversations. Um, and we just obviously these definitions may not apply to every single role, but we wanted to give you this kind of entry into thinking through, okay, is it the responsibilities of my job are at an entry level, but the title is a more mid-level sounding thing? Is it the opposite? And that's really helping you to understand how to look into the trajectory of your career, right? If I'm currently at the entry level, what can I do now to prepare me for that mid-level? If I'm at the mid-level, what can I do to be preparing me for that next step? So really think through where you are, where you've been, and where you want to go as you're building your brand and how you want to market that.
And just to share an example of that from my personal experience, you saw I'm a career services coordinator, which inherently probably comes into an entry level when we look at this. However, the role that I'm in was brand new. So, and I'm an office of one. So it really is a lot more of this mid-level, potentially even director level work that I'm doing. And so that's to Andre's point, it's really important to understand that titles are not everything and that job descriptions do provide a lot of detail. And I don't know if anyone else has experiences with this specifically they'd like to share to just give some in real life examples of how this looks.
Yeah, I'd say I think my current position is kind of the flip of yours, Steph. So my title is assistant director. I'm technically second in command in my office. But then my office is situated, like our student conduct office is situated in a kind of connection to the dean of students office. So my supervisor, while she's the director of our team, is also an assistant dean. So that makes the org chart look a little different. So while the title feels like, oh wow, you're like if she leaves, like I would be assuming the responsibility of the director. But in actuality, my role is pretty entry level, right? I supervise a graduate assistant and some of our other paraprofessionals. So I'm not quite in my assessment at that mid level just yet. But I feel like I'm still able to get some of those really good mid level entry points, right? Through some of the teams I serve on, some of the committee work that I do. So I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds without having the stress and pressure of being like one of the big people at the seat with a seat at that table, you know.
All right. So Julie, you ready to give us your take on 5 words?
Yeah, so my 5 words would be engaging, excited, energized, efficient, and then finally efficient, right? I think I said that twice, but in different contexts, right? So there's organizational efficiency and then relational efficiency. And so my last word, I guess, is relational. I try to, my 5 word be all E, right? And so I am in a master's program right now. I'm very much trained by my alma mater. And so my alma mater, the mascot is the eagle, and I was always taught your 5 words. They need to start with the same letter, and they need to be able to be stagnant to the values of the institution that you represent, as well as in line with that mission and that values, because that's what's going to drive you, unless you are trained otherwise and you feel that disconnect. But for me, while there were times that there were that disconnect, that was what my why was and what keeps me going. And so that's kind of my brand and how I describe my 5 words.
I don't know if I can like do justice to this as much as Julie just did. Um, yeah, as I was thinking about this, I reflected on kind of what we had just talked about in the Know Your Why and like what words associated with that. So I think for me, some of the things that come to mind, like synthesize them in some ways with like my personality. So empowerment is really important. I really like being empowered. I like empowering other people. I like purposeful work. But sometimes that's not always possible, but I really like to think about like the purpose, the long term, and the things that we do having meaning. And that can be in so much way, right? So that's a broad term. Connection is really important to me. So thinking about places that are connected, people who are connected, people who want to connect with you and want to help you grow is really important in student affairs. Andre alluded to this, but it's hard work. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of changes, and doing that alone, you don't need to do that alone. So for me, I don't want to do that alone. I want other people to be helping support, and that's kind of what kept me in student affairs. And I think the other two is like cohesion in planning, in thought of mind, and then reflection. I was going to say wellness, but I feel like reflection is more important to me because wellness is a piece of that being reflective on myself and the things that people do around me and our work. Mine.
I can't believe I'm expected to go after both of you. But yeah, I think when I'm thinking about what my next goal is, so when I do like the values assessments and things like that, futuristic is my top strength or value in a lot of those tests. And I'm always thinking about what is the next, like what am I doing now to prepare me for the next. And so I've given some thought into kind of the things that I want out of my next role. And I think I really want um kind of like flexibility is one thing, but I mean that in terms of a few things. One, I think that the pandemic really showed us that there's more than one way that we can do the work that we do, and it doesn't have to be, you know, set in stone that we do work this way. And so I enjoy environments where I'm able to really explore like different types of engagement with students, right? I also think of flexibility in terms of like the work that I do. Um, some roles in student affairs, higher education can be very like not narrow, but very like focused, right? Your role is to handle student misconduct and address those things, right? Whereas there's some roles that maybe are more broad and like, oh, this day you might be doing some advocacy work on this, or you might be doing something else, right? I enjoy like variety in that way. And so I'm hoping that my next role can give some of that. Um, I would say my second word, I'm gonna steal yours as wellness. I just really want to be in a place of just like peace, tranquility, stability. I want a role um, where I'm able to continue living in a life of, as much leisure as possible. We pour so much of ourselves into our work that I really value being able to um, just exist as a human and not have to worry about some rat race where I'm trying to like fight to the top of any, corporate ladder or anything like that. I'd say that the other words that are coming to mind are very similar. I would say like harmonious. I want to like work in environments where people can work well together. That the teams that I'm a part of are cohesive and communication is on point. And then I think efficient. Julie, I'm stealing your word. I just think that sometimes I tend to get so bogged down in like the details of a thing that I'm spending more time on a task than is necessary sometimes. So I just want to, be in an environment where like it's smooth, things work, there are systems in place. And I know that's four, and I'm not able to come up with a fifth one right off the top. But yeah, I think those encompass pretty much where I'm at. And maybe the fifth one is salary, right? I would love to, continue to increase the financial means by which I'm able to support myself and the people that I love. I don't come from a wealthy background, and so that's really important to me to be able to help out my family and myself and provide myself with a life that I enjoy. So kick it there.
Oh my gosh, these are all so great things. So hopefully, as you're listening, you're sitting down, you're taking notes, you can steal any of our words. These are not exclusive to us. So feel free to use those or use that as some kind of launching point in something else. Um, all right, so we're gonna round this out and kind of think about how we've talked about knowing your why, like where you're at. How can you maybe start to think about where to use this? So in a lot of my work in career services, I talk about this idea of creating a personal statement. Sometimes this could be called a summary. In the old school days, I won't bore you with career services history, it was called an objective. But if you want to know more about that, happy to talk about it. But we also see this as like a summary of qualifications. Where do you see this? Oftentimes, this is in a resume. It would be at the top. It's kind of you putting yourself skills first, the things that you have to offer before you start talking about the details of where you worked and the jobs, duties that you did. Now we also see this on LinkedIn. There's a nice little about tab on LinkedIn. And oftentimes that can be this is what that is, this personal statement, personal summary, lots of different ways. No perfect term for this. The term can be used in the way that you want to use it and you want to express yourself. So really, it's highlighting your skills and experience and qualifications. The easiest way to think about it is if you went through all the jobs, all the volunteer work, anything you've done, and you're creating these bullet points around that. So you're talking about the action items that you did, the skills you used. If you're having the same types of bullet points over and over, this is what you bring into the summary. So if you're constantly saying, I'm working with students, or I'm counseling, or I'm planning events, it means you're getting expertise because you've done that in so many different places that sometimes over patterns of years or in different settings, now you have expertise in these areas. So we see this around presentation, working with students, maybe organization, program management. There's so many different pieces of this. And so that's really what a personal statement is. It's trying to help people who are looking at candidates see these are the highlights of the big pieces of expertise that I bring to the table. So why do you use it? Well, quite frankly, we have a short attention span. I would be surprised if you didn't kind of think about something else throughout this presentation at this point. That's human. The average attention span, 7 minutes. So we want to get people's attention, especially if we potentially haven't built that connection yet. And we're going to talk about that later in the series and our networking portion. But this is a good way to help your reader at the top of your LinkedIn page, at the top of your resume, or maybe even in a conversation, starting to use these pieces of expertise to introduce yourself so that you're hitting on things that you feel really excited about, that you know a lot about, and just really getting the hook of people wanting to ask more, wanting to sit with you, wanting to learn more about you, wanting to have a conversation about all the things that matter to you and where you can fit into their organization and what they're looking for. So how do you format it? It can be formatted in a paragraph form, typically 1 to 2 lines, maybe a little bit longer if you're thinking about a bullet point form. Maybe you have it almost like you pull those exact bullet points from your resume and you just bring them up to the top. You take them out of the job experiences and you bring them up to the top. We are going to have a worksheet. We'll talk about that at the end because it's kind of hard to talk through this. So we'll give you some examples in a worksheet of what that looks like. How could you format it? So maybe you take this paragraph, you start with 3 descriptors about yourself, and then you talk about 3 key accomplishments. Or maybe you take the approach of bullet points and talking about years of experience you have. Or maybe you hit on bolded things that you know how to do, like presentation skills, and then you give a summary of your presentation skills, advising, and then you talk about all the work you have in advising and how that works. And those skills and all of these pieces, we want them to coincide with all the career journey that you're looking to get. So the positions you're looking to get, what are the things they're looking at? You want them to be mirroring. If you're finding they're not, then maybe it's time to take a step back and go back to that why. Like, okay, are we looking at a position that really is going to be conducive to the skills that we offer and the things that we're really excited about? So more details on the worksheet if you need it, but really consider having something like this in your mind, and maybe you use it, maybe it's just for you internally to help yourself create purpose around where you're wanting to go and the things that you bring to the table to help yourself feel confident.
All right. So as we spoke to, identifying your why, right? Figure out who you are and what things you need to feel connected to what you are doing. What helps you want to better yourself as a professional and a person? Why do you show up? Identify your current placement. Where are you in your career currently? What's the goal that you're looking for next? And how can that job transition you to that? What are you looking for out of a next position? What opportunities are you hoping that that position will bring you? What kind of environment, what kind of colleagues, what do you want after work? What environment do you need to be successful? So that's needs versus wants. What are the non-negotiable must-haves? And what are the things you can compromise on? What are the things when you make your big 5 list or your list of things you're looking for in a job, what can you compromise on? And then finally, creative strategy. What are you going to use and what strategic plan are you going to set in motion so that you can then find that job and say, yes, I feel confident that this is going to be a fit. Or if you're between jobs, how many of those needs versus wants can balance out so that you have everything you need. Or the most important things to you. For me in a search, mine was mental, right? Mine was mentoring and recruitment and selection. I knew that's where I want to go. I grew up in an environment where in res life, I never had to ask for that mentoring. It was just who I followed, who I had access to, who I was around. In every stage of my career, except my last position, my boss or my boss's boss has been over that process. And that's going back a decade now, right? So that was something that I was looking for very much. I was looking at that person's resume. I was looking at what they could offer me. I was looking at how they fit me. I was asking them questions about it.
All right, so that concludes the content that we wanted to talk to you about with building your brand. But before we kind of wrap things up, we do want to let you know some of the upcoming things that we have planned. So we do have a few other presentations like this in the series that we're going to be putting on that will be released once a week for the next coming weeks. So the next one will be released on February 6th. And that'll be talking about transferable skills. So we'll take this presentation as a foundation, and we'll continue this dialogue around like what skills do I have? How can they transfer into other functional areas, other areas of student affairs and higher education? So please tune in for that. TPE as an organization is hosting a career fair on February 7th. That'll start at 12 o'clock p.m. Be on the lookout for more information in your emails and on our socials. We'll do another part of this series on networking and recruiting that will come out on February 13th. So as Steph mentioned before, we'll really get into the nuts and bolts of how we can talk about who we are at conferences. We'll talk about things in your elevator pitch, how you can really sell yourself, not yourself, but like sell your story to employers and colleagues and things of the like. The final session in our kind of series here will be talking about negotiating to get the bag. That is really important. We really want to make sure that you are thinking through the things that you need and can really advocate for in the job search process. So come back for that. And then we'll have our big TPE virtual event in March. More information is forthcoming about that. We're so excited to help everyone out there, get connected with those employers and those candidates. So please come back for all these great events that we have coming up. And another thing, we know that these videos are obviously being done without us in a live capacity to answer questions or have dialogue. So if you have any other conversation points or questions or any thoughts, please come to either our comments on Instagram. The DM function of Instagram is also something that we can be monitoring. We would love to continue this conversation with you. This doesn't have to be the one and only time that you engage with us. We're really hoping that this becomes a dialogue and we're able to, have some great conversations. So just, come through on Instagram at the Placement Exchange.
Yes. So please ask your questions as they come up. Don't be shy. No question is unimportant. We've all been there. We've probably all asked those questions. So we want to just leave it today to remember this is your brand, be you. We've given you lots of suggestions, lots of ideas, but we want you to ultimately be yourself and know that it's okay to be different from other people. That's what building your brand is all about. And some resources we're going to have for you to use that we kind of referred to. We're going to have that personal statement worksheet that will give you some details about how do I think about this? What could this look like? We're also going to have a values worksheet if you might think, I don't even know where to start with this. We'll give you some places to start that can hopefully help you in that journey. And so with that, we on the TPE candidate committee really wish you well in this idea of building your brand. And we'll see you again soon for transferable skills.